In the cold, glittering depths of space, where empires rose and fell on the whims of stars, Earth was nothing more than a footnote. To the galactic consensus, a sprawling coalition of advanced civilizations, humans were a primitive species barely worth mentioning. Their technology was laughable, their history riddled with wars, and their biology weak compared to the towering, multi-limbed warriors of the Kroth or the telepathic geniuses of the Erythri. If Earth had any reputation at all, it was as a curious anomaly, an evolutionary backwater floating on the edges of relevance. When the Valark Expeditionary Fleet first detected Earth, it was purely by accident. Their sensors had been calibrated to track dense resource-rich planets, and Earth's rocky surface was unremarkable. Captain Zelia, a meticulous commander whose carapace gleamed under the soft lights of her ship, barely registered interest. Her crew, an assortment of amphibious and crystalline beings, filed reports dismissing Earth as another irrelevant orb. Yet protocol required them to scan its atmosphere, a formality more than anything. The first scan results came back, and Zelia barely glanced at them. The usual cocktail of nitrogen and oxygen, with trace gases typical of life-sustaining planets. But then, an anomaly caught her attention. Buried deep in the readouts was a faint signal, a strange, almost imperceptible hum woven into the planet's atmospheric layers. Zelia tilted her head, her antennae twitching in curiosity. "What is this interference?" she asked, her voice sharp and commanding. The bridge crew paused, their eyes, some multifaceted, others glowing, turning to the readings. A young Erythri scientist, her translucent form shimmering faintly, leaned closer to the console. "It's unusual, Captain. The atmospheric composition is fine, but this signal. It's almost like a resonance, a kind of song." "Song?" Zelia scoffed. "Do you suggest this planet sings to us?" The Erythri flinched slightly but stood her ground. "Not literally, Captain. But it's something beyond our usual scans. It might be worth investigating." Zelia considered this, her claws tapping rhythmically on the edge of her chair. Protocol dictated further investigation of anomalies, but her instincts told her it was a waste of time. Humans, after all, were unimpressive by every metric. "Fine," she said finally. "Run a deeper analysis. But keep it brief. I don't intend to waste resources on a planet that couldn't even invent interstellar travel." The crew obeyed, their scanners probing Earth's atmosphere with unprecedented focus. As the data streamed in, something strange began to emerge. The hum wasn't a random anomaly, it was deliberate, a structured vibration that resonated in complex patterns. The Erythri scientist's translucent skin shimmered with excitement. "Captain, the signal is encoded. It's faint, but I believe it's artificial." Zelia's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Are you suggesting humans are responsible for this?" The scientist hesitated, then nodded. "It's possible. But if they are, it's unlike any technology we've seen before." The suggestion was absurd, laughable even. The idea that a species as technologically backward as humans could produce a signal sophisticated enough to intrigue the galactic consensus was almost insulting. Yet the data didn't lie. Zelia's irritation gave way to curiosity, and she ordered the crew to isolate the source of the signal. The ship's advanced systems triangulated the signal's origin to an unassuming stretch of land on Earth, a sprawling patch of forest. No visible structures, no signs of advanced machinery. Just trees, rivers, and wildlife. The mystery deepened. As they watched from orbit, the ship's sensors picked up another anomaly, a sudden spike in electromagnetic activity emanating from the same location. The energy was massive, far exceeding anything humans should have been capable of producing. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. "Impossible," Zelia murmured, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Captain," the Erythri scientist said, her voice trembling with excitement, "I recommend we deploy a reconnaissance probe. If this is human technology, it could be revolutionary." Zelia hesitated. The galactic consensus had strict regulations about interfering with primitive species, and Earth was classified as pre-space flight. But the signal. It defied logic. If humans had developed something this advanced in secret, it posed a potential threat, or an opportunity. "Send the probe," she ordered finally. Discreetly. "I want answers." The crew worked quickly, launching a sleek, insect-like probe toward the planet. It descended through the atmosphere, invisible to Earth's primitive sensors, and made its way toward the source of the signal. As it neared the ground, its cameras activated, streaming live footage back to the ship. What they saw was nothing. Just a forest bathed in golden sunlight, its trees swaying gently in the wind. The probe scanned the area, its sensors picking up traces of residual energy, but no signs of advanced technology. It hovered silently, its instruments working tirelessly to unravel the mystery. "Captain," the probe operator said, his crystalline hands glowing faintly, "there's no machinery here. No structures. The signal must be coming from somewhere else." Zelia frowned. "Keep looking. Expand the search radius." The probe obeyed, moving deeper into the forest. It passed over rivers and hills, its scanners working furiously. And then, it happened again. A sudden spike of energy, so powerful it briefly overloaded the probe's systems. The feed went dark, and the bridge crew erupted into frantic activity, trying to re-establish the connection. "Report!" Zelia barked, her antennae twitching. The operator's voice was tight with panic. "The probe systems are compromised. Attempting to restore control." The screen flickered back to life, and what they saw made the entire bridge fall silent. The forest had changed. Where once there were only trees, there now stood towering crystalline structures, their surfaces glowing with an ethereal light. The energy readings were off the charts, and at the center of it all was a figure. It wasn't human. At least, not entirely. The figure stood tall, its body a fusion of flesh and shimmering energy. Its eyes glowed with a fierce, otherworldly intelligence as it looked directly at the probe. "It's aware of us," the Erythry scientist whispered, her voice barely audible. Before Zelia could respond, the figure raised its hand, and the probe's feed cut out entirely. The bridge descended into chaos, the crew scrambling to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Zelia's mind raced, torn between disbelief and the dawning realization that they had underestimated Earth in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. "Prepare the ship for closer observation," she ordered, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her mind. "We're not leaving until we know what we're dealing with." As the Velark descended toward Earth's atmosphere, one thing became clear: humanity was no longer just a curiosity. They were a mystery, and one that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Velark hovered in low orbit, its cloaking systems shimmering faintly as the ship's crew grappled with what they had witnessed. The forest on Earth, once a serene expanse of nature, had revealed itself to be something far more enigmatic. The crystalline structures and the figure at their center defied every expectation the galactic consensus had of humanity. Captain Zelia stood in the war room, her mandibles clicking softly in thought as the holographic replay of the probe's final moments looped before her. "We've underestimated them," she said, her voice low but firm. "And that mistake might cost us." Her words sent ripples of unease through the crew. The galactic consensus had always treated Earth as a non-threat, a primitive outlier with little to offer. But now, the possibility loomed that humanity had evolved far beyond what their limited technology suggested. Worse, it seemed they had been hiding it. The Erythry scientist, her translucent form flickering slightly with stress, stepped forward. "Captain, I recommend sending a second probe. This time with enhanced shielding and sensory calibration. We need more data." Zelia nodded but hesitated. "If we send another probe, we risk alerting them further." That entity clearly detected the first one. Korak, the gruff tactical officer with jagged crystalline limbs, interjected. "Captain, they're already aware of us. If we wait, they might prepare a defense, or worse, counterattack. I say we act before they do." The room fell silent as Zelia weighed the options. The galactic consensus forbade direct interference with pre-spaceflight species, but this situation was quickly spiraling beyond protocol. If Earth truly posed a threat, it was her duty to assess it. Deploy the second probe, she said finally. Equip it with maximum stealth enhancements. And this time, I want continuous data feed. No interruptions. The crew moved swiftly, launching a second probe that glided silently toward the planet's surface. Unlike the first, this one was outfitted with advanced cloaking systems, designed to mask its presence even from higher-dimensional awareness. It descended through Earth's atmosphere, its sleek frame glinting faintly in the sunlight as it approached the forest once more. As the probe neared the crystalline structures, it slowed, scanning every detail. The trees seemed untouched, their canopies swaying gently in the breeze, but beneath the surface, the energy readings were staggering. The structures pulsed rhythmically, emitting waves of energy that resonated with the atmosphere itself. It was as if the planet was alive, its heartbeat amplified through the crystalline forms. Captain, the probe operator reported. The energy signatures are increasing. It's almost like they're reacting to us. Zelia leaned forward, her antennae twitching with anticipation. What's the source of the energy? Still undetermined, the operator replied. It's coming from beneath the structures. Scans indicate a massive underground network, but it's shielded. We can't penetrate it. Before Zelia could respond, the feed flickered. The probe's sensors detected movement, a subtle ripple across the crystalline surface, as if it were shifting. The figure reappeared, stepping into view with an unearthly grace. It was the same being they had seen before, its glowing eyes locking onto the probe with an intensity that sent a chill through the crew. It's them again, the Arithari whispered. The one from the first probe. The figure raised its hand, and the crystalline structures around it began to vibrate, their resonance growing louder. The probe's systems flagged the energy as a potential threat, but before it could retreat, the figure spoke. The voice was not transmitted through sound but through a wave of energy that rippled through the probe and into the Velark. It was deep, resonant, and carried a weight of authority that silenced everyone on the bridge. Why do you intrude upon our domain? The voice asked, each word reverberating in the minds of the crew. Zelia froze, her mandibles parting slightly in shock. Communication of this kind was rare, even among the most advanced species of the galactic consensus. For a human, or what she assumed was a human, to speak like this was unthinkable. This is Captain Zelia of the galactic consensus, she said, her voice steady despite the tension. We detected anomalies in your atmosphere and sought to investigate. We mean no harm. The figure tilted its head, as if considering her words. You trespass on what you do not understand. Your kind judges us weak, yet you fear what you cannot explain. Tell me, Captain Zelia, what do you seek? Zelia hesitated. What did they seek? Answers? Understanding? Or was it simply fear driving them to investigate the unknown? We seek to understand, she said finally. Your signal defies logic, and your technology surpasses what we believed your species was capable of. We wish to know your intentions. The figure's eyes glowed brighter, and the crystalline structures pulsed in unison. You look for answers in the wrong place. Our strength lies not in what you see but in what you cannot comprehend. Leave this place, or you will force us to show you what humanity truly is. The threat, or warning, hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Zelia's instincts screamed at her to retreat, but her pride and duty held her in place. She motioned for the probe to continue its scans, hoping to glean more information before the situation escalated further. But the figure reacted swiftly. With a wave of its hand, the probe's systems overloaded, and the feed cut out once again. This time, the energy surge traveled back to the Velark, causing the ship's lights to flicker and its systems to stutter. Captain, Korik barked, his voice tight with urgency. We need to pull back now. They're turning our technology against us. Zelia clenched her claws, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. They couldn't retreat empty-handed, not after coming this far. But staying risked provoking a confrontation they weren't prepared for. Full retreat, she ordered finally. Activate stealth protocols and pull us out of their atmosphere. We'll regroup and reassess. As the Velark ascended back into orbit, Zelia couldn't shake the unease settling over her. The figure's words echoed in her mind. Leave this place, or you will force us to show you what humanity truly is. Humanity, it seemed, was no longer the primitive species the galactic consensus had dismissed. They were something far more dangerous, and far more extraordinary, than anyone had imagined. And Zelia knew the galaxy wouldn't be ready for what came next. The Velark drifted in high orbit above Earth, its cloaking systems humming faintly as Captain Zelia stood before the main display. Below, the planet spun peacefully, its blue oceans and green continents betraying no sign of the incredible power they had just witnessed. But Zelia wasn't deceived. Humanity was hiding something extraordinary, and it was unlike anything the galactic consensus had ever encountered. Nexus energy spikes are increasing exponentially, the Erythri scientist reported, her translucent form flickering with anxiety. Whatever they're doing down there, it's spreading. The crystalline structures are emitting signals at a planetary scale now. Korak, the tactical officer, paced beside her, his crystalline limbs clinking softly. Captain, we can't just sit here. That thing, the one we saw, warned us to leave. If we stay, we risk provoking a response we can't handle. Zelia's antennae twitched as she stared at the display. And if we leave without understanding what's happening, we risk the consensus being blindsided by a force we know nothing about. Humanity has somehow developed technology that rivals our own, or perhaps something entirely different. If we retreat now, we'll never know the extent of their capabilities. Korak opened his mouth to protest, but a sudden alarm cut him off. The holographic display flared red as a wave of energy rippled from Earth's surface, racing outward and brushing against the Velarka's cloaking field. What was that? Zelia demanded. The probe operator's voice was tight with fear. It's a pulse, a scan. They know exactly where we are. Even as the words left his mouth, the ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered, and a low hum vibrated through the hull. A holographic image of the Earth appeared on the main display, but it wasn't the serene image they had seen before. The planet's surface seemed alive with energy, crystalline veins glowing faintly beneath forests, mountains, and oceans. They're targeting us, Korak shouted. Shields up, Zelia barked. Full power to defensive systems. Prepared to counterattack if necessary. The crew scrambled to obey, but their efforts seemed almost futile. Another energy wave struck the ship, bypassing their shields entirely. Systems flickered and dimmed as the Velark groaned under the assault. Zelia's claws clenched the armrests of her chair. Status report, she demanded. Shields are ineffective, the Erythri scientist said, her voice trembling. The energy is bypassing them entirely. It's not a weapon, it's an interrogation. An interrogation? Zelia's mandibles clicked sharply. Explain. It's probing our systems, Captain, the scientist said. It's analyzing everything, our technology, our power, our communications. The realization hit Zelia like a punch to the gut. Humanity wasn't attacking them, they were studying them, dismantling their defenses not with brute force but with overwhelming intelligence. The implications were staggering. If humanity could do this to a consensus warship, what else were they capable of? Before she could respond, the ship's holographic interface flickered. A figure appeared, a towering, glowing form that resembled the one they had seen in the forest. This time, however, it was no longer confined to Earth's surface. It stood in the war room as if it had always been there, its presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Captain Zelia, the figure said, its voice resonating through the ship. You were warned. The crew froze, their faces pale with fear. Even Korak, who had faced countless battles, looked shaken. Zelia forced herself to stand, meeting the figure's glowing gaze. We meant no harm, she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. We sought only to understand. The figure tilted its head, the motion almost curious. Your kind dismisses us as primitive. Yet you invade our skies, send machines to spy upon us, and now cower in fear when faced with what you do not comprehend. Tell me, Captain, is this the behavior of the enlightened? Zelia bristled but held her tongue. The figure wasn't wrong. The consensus had always regarded Earth as insignificant, a curiosity at best. Yet here they were, powerless against a force they couldn't even begin to understand. "What are you?" she asked finally. "You're not human. At least, not entirely." The figure's glowing eyes seemed to brighten. "We are human, and we are more. You see us as we allow you to see us, but the truth of what we are is beyond your understanding. We are the product of evolution, of survival, of adaptation. And we will not be threatened." "We don't intend to threaten you," Zelia said. "But your power, it poses questions we must answer. If you've advanced this far, the galaxy deserves to know." "The galaxy deserves nothing," the figure said, its voice sharp. "You believe knowledge is your right, but it is a privilege. One you have not earned." Before Zelia could respond, the ship shuddered again. This time, the energy rippling through its systems wasn't hostile. It was deliberate. Controlled. The figure raised a hand, and a wave of light washed over the Velark. Every screen, every console, every system flickered with data. "They're uploading something," Korik said, his voice filled with alarm. "Stand down," Zelia ordered. "Let them finish." The crew obeyed, though their fear was palpable. The wave of light subsided, and the figure lowered its hand. The data continued to stream across the ship's systems, forming patterns and symbols that Zelia didn't recognize. "What is this?" she asked. "A warning," the figure said. "Leave this place, and do not return. If you value your existence, you will not seek to challenge us again. What you see now is but a fragment of our capabilities." The figure's glowing form began to fade, its presence lingering even as it disappeared. The ship's system stabilized, and the oppressive energy dissipated. But the weight of the figure's words hung heavy in the air. Zelia sank back into her chair, her claws tapping against the armrests as she processed what had just happened. Humanity was no longer the insignificant species the consensus had dismissed. They were something far greater, and far more dangerous, than anyone had ever imagined. "Captain," the Arithuri scientist said softly, "what do we do now?" Zelia's gaze remained fixed on the planet below. "We retreat. We report. And we pray that humanity never decides to leave their world." The ship turned silently, its engines glowing faintly as it slipped back into the void. For the first time in her career, Zelia felt truly outmatched, not by brute strength or advanced technology, but by the sheer, unknowable potential of a species that had been hiding in plain sight. The Velark retreated from Earth's orbit, its engines humming softly as the ship moved into the safety of deep space. Captain Zelia sat in silence on the bridge, her crew working quietly around her. No one dared speak about the glowing figure, the crystalline structures, or the chilling warning they had received. For the first time in her career, Zelia felt not just outmatched, but humbled. Humanity, the species the galactic consensus had dismissed for centuries, had proven itself to be far more formidable and enigmatic than anyone had anticipated. "Nexus report," Zelia ordered, her voice sharp despite the weariness tugging at her. The holographic avatar of the ship's AI materialized, its calm demeanor a stark contrast to the tension on the bridge. "Systems are stable, Captain. The energy interference from the human entity has subsided. However, the data they uploaded remains indecipherable. It does not conform to any known linguistic or computational framework." Zelia leaned back, her claws drumming lightly against the armrest of her chair. "What about the scans? Did we recover anything useful before the interference?" The Arithuri scientist stepped forward, her translucent form dimmer than usual. "The scans confirmed an extensive network of crystalline structures beneath the planet's surface. Their purpose remains unclear, but the energy they generate is massive, far beyond anything we've encountered. It's as if the planet itself is alive, a conduit for their technology." "And the figure?" Zelia asked. "It wasn't an individual," the scientist said, her voice trembling slightly. "Or at least, not in the way we understand. It was a projection, an amalgamation of consciousnesses. It spoke with the authority of an entire species. The weight of the revelation settled over the bridge like a dense fog. Zelia's mind churned with possibilities. Humanity's true nature was no longer a question of technological advancement, but something far deeper. They weren't just evolving, they were transcending. "Captain," Korik said, his crystalline limbs shifting uneasily, "this data isn't just a warning. It's a declaration. Humanity wants us to know that they're ready, and if we push them, they'll act." Zelia nodded slowly. "And we don't know how far their reach extends. If what we saw was just a fragment of their capabilities." She trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. The crew worked in tense silence as the ship continued its retreat. The stars outside the viewport seemed colder, more distant than before. Zelia couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, even now, as they fled from the planet that had humbled them. Humanity's warning was clear, but the question of why they had revealed themselves lingered in her mind. Hours passed, and the bridge settled into an uneasy calm. The uploaded data remained an unsolved mystery, a labyrinth of patterns and symbols that defied even the ship's advanced decryption algorithms. Zelia ordered it archived for further analysis, though part of her doubted they would ever understand it. Then, without warning, the ship's systems flickered again. Lights dimmed, consoles rebooted, and the holographic display on the main screen changed. The crew froze as a new image appeared, a vision of Earth, but not as they had seen it from orbit. This was different, a swirling nexus of energy emanating from the planet's core, spreading out like veins through the cosmos. "What is this?" Zelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The AI responded, its tone uncharacteristically hesitant. "It appears to be a map, Captain. A representation of energy conduits extending from Earth's core into distant regions of space." Korik's crystalline fingers tightened into fists. "You're saying their influence isn't confined to Earth?" The Erythri scientist stepped forward, her translucent skin flickering with realization. "No. This is their reach. These conduits, they're not just energy pathways. They're connections, links to something larger." "Connections to what?" Zelia demanded. The scientist hesitated. "The galaxy itself." The bridge fell silent as the enormity of the revelation sank in. Humanity wasn't just advancing, they were integrating, weaving themselves into the very fabric of the cosmos. The implications were staggering. If they could manipulate energy at this scale, they were no longer a species bound by the limitations of biology or technology. They were something more. Zelia felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. The galactic consensus had always prided itself on its superiority, its ability to oversee and guide the lesser species of the galaxy. But now, faced with humanity's evolution, that pride felt hollow. "We have to report this," she said finally. "The consensus needs to know what we've discovered." Korik frowned. "And what exactly do we tell them? That humans have become gods? That we're completely outmatched? You think the consensus will take that lying down?" "They'll have to," Zelia said, her voice firm. "Because if we provoke humanity, it won't just be the consensus that suffers. It'll be the entire galaxy." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one argued. Zelia's orders were clear, and they all knew the truth. Humanity had outgrown its place as a minor player in the cosmic hierarchy. They were no longer a species to be dismissed or underestimated. They were a force of nature, one that had chosen to remain hidden, until now. As the Velark prepared for hyperspace, Zelia took one last look at the map glowing on the display. The conduits stretched far beyond Earth, their intricate patterns forming a web of power that connected countless points across the galaxy. It was beautiful, in a way, and terrifying. "Mark our course," she ordered, "and archive every detail of this mission. The consensus must know what we've seen." The ship's engines flared as it slipped into hyperspace, leaving Earth and its mysteries behind. But even as they fled, Zelia couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of what humanity had become. The warning had been clear, but it carried an unspoken promise as well, a promise that, should the galaxy choose to challenge them, humanity would not hesitate to respond. For now, The galaxy remained unaware of the storm brewing on the edges of its consciousness. But Zillion knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. Humanity had sent their message, and it was only a matter of time before the rest of the universe was forced to listen.